Mercedes-Benz is rolling their SUV lineup all the way down Sesame Street. We've seen A, C, E, S and G, and this episode is now brought to you by the letter B. So, what's the plan? We'll take a look at the exterior design and discuss how the GLB fits into the Mercedes-Benz range, because it's not as clear as the name would suggest. We'll have a look at the interior design and then the most important feature of the GLB, the 7-seat packaging. We'll look at the tech on offer, including some of the more fun features of the MBUX system, then hit the road to talk about the engine, gearbox, driveline and off-road modes. As always, hit subscribe to stay up to date with all of our latest videos. Hit the bell icon so you receive a notification every time a new clip is published, and hit us up in the comments with any thoughts and suggestions and what you'd like to see when we have more time to spend with the GLB, particularly how are you going to use it in your life. The GLB is a new model SUV designed for urban buyers who need a smaller footprint car for running about town, but still want interior space and practicality for family trips away. It's tall, thin and quite boxy, coming off like a modern update to the GLK, which we never actually saw in Australia. The black cladding and tall glasshouse make it look much more of a traditional SUV wagon, and it's obviously drawn inspiration from the G-est G of all, the Mercedes G-Wagon. 3 models are on offer from launch: a front drive GLB200, our car, the all-wheel drive 250 Matic, and the sportier GLB35 AMG. I gotta say, it's really growing on me, especially from the rear. The Galaxy Blue paint is new for the GLB and one of 8 options, but I'd probably choose a more traditional white to help bring out some of these contrast trim elements. How does it fit into the range? The GLB name would suggest it slots neatly between the GLA and the GLC. It's bigger than a GLA, there's 100mm more between the wheels and it's still 50mm off the GLC's wheelbase. But it's closely related to the GLA. It's based on the same architecture as the new A-Class. You get the new widescreen dash, a lot of the technology, the same look and feel. But it's priced closer to a GLC. The range starts at $59,900 before options and on-roads for the 200. This car is $73,900, just short of a GLC 300. Why? It's a 7-seater, which makes it less of a smaller, taller GLC and more of a pint-sized GLS. Confused yet? It's okay, I'll explain. Okay, so the GLS is a proper 7-seater. It means you've got 2, 3 and 2 seats in the back with room enough for adults. This is what's referred to as a 5+2. You've got 5 seats here, 2 in the back to use sometimes. And to have that kind of flexibility in a compact platform like the GLB is some pretty clever packaging, and it all starts with this row here. Now, as you can see, I've got plenty of room here, heaps of headroom. This seat's in my driving position. I'm 6'3". This bench is split between a 60/40 and is on rail, so I can actually move that forward to there, which is actually way too uncomfortable, so I'll move that back to here. I've still got some room here, and we've now allowed some for the back. The backrest also reclines, there are vents, and there are USB charge points below. Access to the third row is easy. Just a one-touch tilt and slide on either side. The wide doors on the GLB make access as simple as possible for kids. Well, I'm back here mainly to prove a point more than anything, that there is actually enough room, providing your children aren't 45 and 6'3". There are USB ports and cup holders to keep them comfortable too. And check this out. This seat is in the position that I was sitting in before, and I actually can fit. My hair is touching the roof, but that's about it, meaning that as sometimes seats, they're okay to use, sometimes. There are curtain airbags to cover all 3 rows, making 9 in total, plus a sum of 4 Isofix car seat points, 2 in the third row and 1 on each outside seat in the middle. Pretty handy. Plus, there's a 5-star AMCAP safety rating. All that interior flexibility can work for luggage too. With the third row up, there's a little bit of room as well as storage for the parcel shelf, which is always handy. Fold those seats down 50-50 to offer 500 litres, which is just 50 litres shy of a GLC. Fold everything away for 1755 litres. You can even fold the front passenger seat down to squeeze in items up to 2.7 metres in length. And for context, that's like me standing with my hands in the air. Right, well, I'm a lot more comfortable here. As you can see, I actually do have headroom and I can stretch out. The seats are very good. And of course, we are greeted by the latest Mercedes-Benz interior, the cool turbine vents, the great interior lighting, and the amazing twin screen dashboard layout. But you do have to remember, this is an A-Class. That's not carbon fiber, that's not metal, that's not leather. But it really doesn't matter if you go in with your eyes open, because it's a lot more modern than what you'll find in, say, a Land Rover Discovery Sport, and a lot more configurable than what you'll find in a BMW, because the whole thing is underpinned by one of the most impressive technology systems available. Mercedes-Benz call the software MBUX, and it controls everything from the audio, there's a DAB tuner as standard, navigation, and the instrument display. You can interact by using the touchscreen, the touchpad, the buttons on the wheel, or by simply saying, "Hey Mercedes," and asking a question. You can dig even deeper to set your interior lighting mood and even have it change when you interact with the car. Make the temperature hotter and the lights glow red. Nice. There are different skins to the instruments to show traditional dials or a more modern data display, all in crisp high resolution. Plus you can link the system to your phone and control the car when you aren't even near it. It's well featured, but it's also well complicated. It would honestly take hours to run through all of the menus and all of the screens and all of the options presented by MBUX. It is a very, very complicated system, but it is pretty cool. It takes a bit of getting used to, but it certainly is rewarding every time you drive. Now, speaking of which, let's hit the road. The GLB200 features a 1.3 litre 4-cylinder turbocharged petrol engine with 120 kilowatts. The 35 features a 2 litre 4-cylinder turbocharged petrol engine with 225 kilowatts. This car, the 250, fits pretty much in between. It is a 2 litre 4-cylinder turbocharged petrol engine with 165 kilowatts, 5,000 RPM, and 350 Newton meters of torque, available nice and low at just 1,800 RPM. And for a car of this size, it's pretty sprightly. 165 kilowatts is enough to enjoy yourself, and the car provides a pretty solid sporting level of performance for a little SUV. Fuel consumption, Mercedes claim, is 7.7 litres per 100 kilometres on a combined cycle in the 250. We have been driving it in a variety of conditions and have found it to be a little bit above that, but certainly within cooee. So I imagine on a longer drive, you'll sit around the sixes. Around town might be a bit higher, but in general terms, it's a relatively economic platform. Now, the 250 is a 4MATIC all-wheel drive with an 8-speed dual-clutch transmission. Now, this gearbox is actually new to a Mercedes-Benz. It's the Mercedes AMG box out of the A35. In this car and on the move, it is very smooth. You don't notice the car changing up and down. It does suit the engine really well. You've even got paddles here to change with if you want. But what I will say is low-speed driving in town, like reverse parking, changing directions from drive to reverse and vice versa, there can be a fair amount of latency when the gear is selecting which direction you're heading. And Mercedes say this is a learning transmission, so it actually adapts to the way you drive and becomes sharper over time. It obviously hasn't learned to the way I drive yet, and it might be something that you should check and test drive before you commit to this car. Well, so far so good. Another good thing about the GLB is the ride. Now, in a larger Mercedes SUV like a GLE, you're going to be on air suspension and you'll cushy along. This car is still on steel springs, but it's a very, very compliant ride. Keeping the car in its comfort setting as you will around town most of the time, it soaks up the bumps, it doesn't crash, it doesn't hit. We've got relatively big wheels here, they're 19-inch, but it's still a very, very comfortable ride. And I think this is where this car may start to really find new buyer fans, because the GLC, for example, tries to feel a little bit more sporty. This one is definitely embracing its genus in terms of being an SUV and has opted for a much more comfortable ride control. And it doesn't mean that it's soft and spongy around corners either. It's actually a really, really fun car to drive. Now, speaking of being fun to drive, we can pop the car in its sport mode. And you can probably hear that. It lightens up our throttle response. Hold gears for probably too long, but still, if you're going for a sporty drive, it doesn't really matter. And you can change up on the paddles. But it makes the GLB dare I say, quite fun to drive around. I imagine with a full complement of passengers, you would probably know the excess weight would feel maybe a little bit too much, but certainly like this, with just me on board, it's a pretty fun thing. And that is, again, part of the appeal of this car. You can enjoy yourself while still having a practical layout. The high glasshouse in the GLB gives you excellent vision and visibility all round. We've got the sunroof blinds open, which really makes the cabin feel bigger than it is. And the extra headroom that you get in the higher format of this car, it certainly enhances that sense of space. And you do forget that this is smaller than a GLC and smaller than many other SUVs in this segment. There is a solid array of safety technology standard on the GLB, including lane keep assist, blind spot assist, and autonomous emergency braking. But some of the more convenience-oriented features are extra. Now, this car does feature the optional driver assistance pack, which is the upgraded version of the standard safety equipment that comes on the GLB. Features a stereoscopic camera there in the windscreen, which allows us to use that full complement of Mercedes convenience and safety technology. Now, I would argue that that pack should be standard on this car, certainly at its price point, and for the extra suite of technology you get over the standard, it's kind of expected at this level as well. So things like adaptive cruise control and automatic lane change really should be a normal part of the 250. Make sure you get that bundled in. The other thing to say while on the move is the MBUX software, and as we saw before, the sheer volume of personalisation and depth within the screens and menus that's a lot of fun to play with when you're standing still, can be a bit daunting when you're on the move. It's sometimes you're not quite sure what to do, and you find that you just tend to leave it alone as you drive, which isn't really, I guess, where they were going to with this system, to try and make it intuitive and adaptable on the fly. But I find it is just better to leave it alone. One cool thing that I will say though is if you're in an area where the car is being sent data, it will show you petrol stations on the navigation map with the current price of petrol, which I actually reckon is a really, really cool thing, and certainly a consumer level feature which you'll probably use more often than you wouldn't. Another key thing to remember about the 250 is that it is all-wheel drive. It's a front drive bias platform that uses the rear wheels when acceleration or conditions need it. There is actually an off-road drive mode that you can put the car in. Because we are on steel springs, it doesn't change the height or anything, but just simply allows you to use a hill descent control function. It turns on the cornering lamps all the time to give you extra visibility as you're driving down an off-road path, maybe at night, and is certainly capable enough of this car going to an off-road campsite or maybe to the snow. You'll see a lot of these at the snow, I'm sure. But in terms of providing a all questions answered, full-featured answer book to anything that you can throw at it, the GLB really is a bit of a Swiss Army knife. Okay, so the GLB, it is a jack of all trades, but it isn't master of none. That well-packaged interior, funky styling and impressive technology set it apart from other cars in its segment, as well as other models in the Mercedes showroom. The high roof and sometimes seats are a win for space and practicality, plus the ride, performance and level of tech is going to be a real winner with buyers. The speed of the transmission and complexity of the MBUX interface will take a bit of getting used to, plus the pricing is definitely on the high side, especially if you start ticking option boxes. Well, my advice, stick with the 250, take or leave the sports pack, but make sure you get the driver assistance technology bundled in, because it is tech that really should be standard on a car of this caliber and at this price point. Got a different opinion, a perfect spec, or you just want to make fun of the fact that I move my hands around when I talk? Hit us up in the comments below. Of course, don't forget to subscribe to stay up to date with all of our latest videos. Hit the bell icon to receive a notification every time a new clip is published. You, of course, can read the full details of the GLB at CarAdvice.com.